Welcome to Roll Call, the independent education and boarding school management podcast. Each week, your hosts, Brian and Josh, deliver practical strategies and insightful interviews that keep you at the forefront of independent school management so you can deliver expert-level education and care to your students. Roll Call is sponsored by Reach Boarding, an award-winning, feature-rich boarding school management tool used by over 400 schools across 5 continents to manage risk, gain efficiency, and improve communications throughout their boarding operations. Now, here are your hosts, Brian Murray and Josh Simons.
Welcome to Roll Call, Global Trends in Independent School Education. I'm one of your hosts, Josh Simons, and I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Brian Murray. Say something profound to the people there, Brian.
Hi, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well.
Today, we have a couple of firsts. This is our first podcast with 2 guests and our first podcast with 2 life partners together, an educational power couple, Miss Aileen Lee and Dr. Spencer Fowler. Miss Aileen Lee is Chief Strategy Officer at the Affiliated High School of Peking University's Education Group, which supports 12 campuses across China. Aileen previously served as Deputy Head of School at the Affiliated High School of Peking University's Dalton Academy, in addition to Director of College Counseling, Head of Admissions and Development. Dr. Spencer Fowler is a former professional athlete, firefighter, and an educational leader who presently serves as the CEO and Superintendent of the Affiliated High School of Peking University's Dalton Academy. Spencer spent the last 15 years working in international education as a K-12 teacher and administrator in Chile, Egypt, Germany, South Africa, Spain, Thailand, Vietnam, and China, earning his master's and doctorate of educational leadership along the way. That is a lot of places, and welcome to Roll Call, both of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
So before we get into any kind of content, I do have a question for you. So why don't we start with, is there any possible way you have an abbreviation for the Affiliated High School of Peking University's Dalton Academy?
We do, and that makes sense in Chinese. So the Affiliated High School of Peking University is Beida Fuzheng.
So that's way better.
Much cleaner and more simple. And Dalton Academy is the Guoji Bu, so it's the international component of that. So in Chinese, it's very succinct. It's very easy to understand where we are and what we represent. But when we go overseas, it's exhausting, when you're introducing yourself, what you do, your title, and then the name of your school. So we always dread that. If we're giving a presentation, a speech, or someone's like, what's the school that you represent?
Like also, an affiliated school also has an international division, well, 10 of them at least. And a lot of times it's like, oh, we're the international division of XYZ, but we don't really even say that we're the international. We say we're Dalton Academy. So that makes it even more confusing.
Right, because then people jump to the conclusion that Dalton in New York, and Dalton in New York was involved at the beginning, when the Affiliated High School of Peking University and Peking University, during this period of inception, were wanting to then create the best and most impressive and most provocative international program. They then sought counsel and help and support from schools and educational leaders from around the world, which included people from Dalton in New York, Hotchkiss, the Resso School in Finland. So a lot of people on board to help get this project off the ground so that this school would be an experiment within an experiment. Because the Affiliated High School of Peking University itself is also very progressive, and its educational philosophies are very different from other schools within China, although they are prepping students for the Gaokao. So that very large standardized exam, that machine that will determine where you're going to place and what universities will accept you in China.
So it's super complex.
Very, 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 very complex.
You asked the question, Josh. You got the answer, buddy.
I got the answer. And it leads me to my next question is, can you give us kind of a little bit, and you just gave us a taste, maybe like, what's the history? What provoked a school like this to start, and how did you guys get involved?
So I think going back to, the Chinese culture and the country and how it's so hard to get into the best universities. They were knowing and seeing a trend that a lot of the national students were studying abroad. So then the public schools basically then created a department where they would provide service for students to prepare them to study university abroad. And this became the international division of the affiliated university schools.
So if we take it back a little further, if we look at the university, Peking University has been around for over 100 years, and it's a very impressive university, one of the top universities in the world, right? Again, very progressive, avant-garde teaching and learning. 60 years ago, they then opened their affiliated high school as a means and a way to shepherd then top students into that program, ideally, and or other top-ranked universities in and across China. 10 years ago, as Aileen was saying, then the board from Peking University and its affiliated high school decided, well, let's also then try to have a program that's equally progressive and avant-garde, but it's then going to shepherd students to then the top international or top overseas universities. So then we have an experiment within an experiment. So a lot more nimble and agile to really dissect teaching and learning and to develop systems and policies and experiments that are going to be very unique to this school. Not only to education in China, but education globally. That's sort of the main driving feature of the school, is that the curriculum that we use, it's all tailor-made. So there's nothing that we're using that's sort of store-bought or packaged by anyone else. Mm-hmm. So the faculty that we're going to employ will be teaching and designing educational experiences based on their expertise and based on their resources. So we invest in people as opposed to things. And then we expect that the teaching and learning is going to extend to something meaningful, whereby the students and the faculty are able to then tackle real-world problems and issues and change and better the world, as opposed to then teaching and preparing for any standardized exam. And if you look at the system within Peking University's affiliated high school, although it's avant-garde and it's unique, the teaching and learning, ultimately, it does streamline to an exam, a very important standardized exam. So for us, we're not allowed to do anything traditional, and we're not teaching and prepping to any exams, including the standardized exams the student have to sit, the SAT, ACT, IELTS, TOEFL, etc.
And just to give a little background to any listeners that aren't familiar with the Chinese system, so we're known as what's called a national key level school, and a lot of schools in China have better resources in the city, say tier 1 cities. So these national or these affiliated schools to universities are usually located in tier 1 cities. So that's why there's such a big push for students to move to the big city to go to school there, because they believe that the schools in those cities have better resources than if you were to be outside of the big city.
That's a great explanation and introduction. It seems to be counterintuitive or counter to what I always understood the Chinese educational system to be. Very rigid. I know of the Gaokao. I've never taken it. I know of the Gaokao. I know students that took the Gaokao. It makes or breaks you, and all focus is put into preparing for that exam. So I would think that the stream of educational wisdom is directed at that preparation, which requires some standardization. And then the school that you've just described sounds completely opposite to what I traditionally thought Chinese education would even allow.
Right. I mean, you have to think about the school that it's set up and functions as a way, as this playground for then faculty to continue to contribute in their area of their field of expertise. So if you're an English teacher, but you're constantly writing and you're constantly publishing academic, non-academic work, and you're then connecting those resources and those opportunities to your students. They're also writing as well, not for an A, but for publication. And then that network also becomes available to the other faculty. So then your non-writing or English department are also now being immersed and connected to these people. Your art teacher is making art in addition to teaching art, and then connecting students to that art community within Beijing, within China, and around the world. Your humanities teacher, the same thing, meaningful projects and working with people, the UN, UNHCR, different embassies, again, on projects that are current and relevant and very important right now. And so for us, it's as much as possible to extend the teaching and learning, the knowledge and skills to outside resources to then make meaningful impact. In addition to staying current and relevant and contributing to your area and field, and students are also part of that, it's also how do we re-engineer the educational experience as well. So the school, the program, the system is constantly changing. It's this living and breathing organism that from when we started, it doesn't even resemble the same school or institution. And that's what also makes it exciting. It's hard for us to even think about or even consider where do we go from here, because nothing even comes close. The program that we're a part of is always changing and evolving, and we don't want to let go of that. So our job is to prevent these systems and these materials and resources that would stifle our faculty and our students. And we need to keep figuring out ways how we could continue being provocative and how we could then connect to more resources, to do more things. So how do we continue to open up the school?
How do you keep it from spilling out? You're baking this cake, and how do you stop the cake from like falling all over the pan?
Well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with it spilling all over?
That's a good one.
When it spills over, I'll tell you what's wrong with that is the universities aren't ready for that. We want to go over it. We want to spill over. We want to make things bigger and fancier, but the universities are telling us no, because your scores are more important than following your passion and doing projects. So no, that's what we're waiting for higher education.
I have a different take on that because I'm here not because of the salary. I'm here because look what I get to be a part of. I get to be a part of seeing how these students and faculty are changing the world. And in no other setting have I worked at in terms of a K-12 context have I seen that faculty are empowered and have the ability to change the world. Likewise, the students, in the context where I'm coming from, and Aileen as well, the traditional international schools, your teachers are inundated. They're stuck on campus all day long, teaching these courses, grading and shepherding and guiding these students to these standardized exams, IB, AP, et cetera. And then likewise with the students, and they're stuck in this rat race and they're just funneled through the system and there's nothing really meaningful or inspirational happening. Your English teachers aren't writing, or that'd be very rare. Your art teachers aren't making art because they don't have the time, And here we're part of a system where if there's a paper that is required of the students to do, you have faculty who are also writing the paper too. And they're making themselves vulnerable, and they're sort of exposing that vulnerability by being real and genuine with the students. There's this amazing connection or relationship between faculty and student as this team, as opposed to teacher-student. I'm teaching you to do this. I would never be vulnerable for you and sort of work with a problem with you or write that paper for you. I assign it to you and then I grade it. But here we have something different. So it's beautiful in the context of that teaching and learning, but then the experience and then seeing how impactful it can be. There are universities that get very excited about the projects and they want to connect themselves to these really meaningful and special projects and research, et cetera. But then, as Aileen has pointed out, a lot of them are saying, well, what was the SAT scores, ATT scores, IELTS, TOEFL, et cetera? And if that's the first part of the conversation, that's really heartbreaking because we've had students who've been disappointed because they've been all in specific to these kind of projects and these initiatives and helping us to reform and change education. And so they're not focusing very much attention on the SAT, IELTS, TOEFL, that sort of standardized test prep. And I'd like to keep putting more resources and time and connecting people to new and different projects as opposed to then that push and pull, right?
I love that the comment that you just made about the beauty of the teacher and student relationship. I think that speaks to me for sure. And it's a really hard thing to generate, isn't it, in a traditional classroom setting? There's very few days where I felt beautiful in class or had that beauty of a relationship. It happens occasionally, but it sounds like it happens more frequently at the school that you guys are at.
I think it happens more frequently because we don't inundate our faculty. They're actually not allowed to teach that much. So we limit the amount of instructional hours they're going to have a week. Maximum would be 12. In addition to that, they have office hours. So they're meeting with their students a lot. So then outside of that instructional time, they have those office hours. So it's individual, small groups. So how do we then help push you or connect you? You're passionate, you're interested in your talent. How can we shepherd you, support you, guide you to then make meaningful impact with the people from my network or connected to my network or you name it, whether that faculty member is involved or not. We have research grants. So there's lots of ways to stimulate that and to nurture that and cultivate that because the teachers do have time. They have time to work on their own craft. They have time to then be supporting and working with students and other.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you're talking about what age do people enter your school? 15, 14, 16? Or is that variable?
So they enter usually around 10th grade.
Around 10th grade.
Public school is 10th grade. Yeah.
10th grade through 12th grade.
Yeah, it sounds like it's almost like a university environment, but you just start 3 to 4 years earlier.
Right. I think a lot of our faculty would argue that don't think about the school as a high school. Think about it as a combination of higher education and industry. This is an undergraduate program through a doctoral level program with the types of research and projects and initiatives that these people are doing and undertaking.
We also like to compare it to a liberal arts college, smaller classes, that provides the breadth. You're going to get a variety of classes, a lot of electives, and then also we provide the depth. So for the students who are able and capable of conducting research and have an idea that they know what they're passionate about already, then we encourage them to take advantage of taking their studies further. It's like when we help identify students to study in the US or whether they're more suitable for the UK. And then again, taking account into, again, the breadth versus depth.
I mean, I just want to highlight that, our students have so much control or power and autonomy to be choosing the classes that they want to be in, to be choosing the faculty members they want to be doing research with, their projects that they're going to be focusing on. They're determining how many classes they're going to take, when they're going to be taking those classes. They co-create these classes with faculty. You have classes with one faculty member and one student. You have some classes with one student and two faculty members. You have the biggest extreme would be one faculty member and 18 students, and everywhere in between. There is that partnership and that bond. And so again, it's not just teacher, dictating to student, but it's that collaboration. It's that partnership.
If I'm a student that goes to your school, I'm in grade 10, I'm on my way in. I mean, I joke around about how when I was 35, I thought I was going to be an athletic director for the rest of my life. And here I am 45 in a completely different career. I'm 15 years old. I'm coming in, I'm exploring everything. How do you support the kid that doesn't know? How do you support the kid that goes in there and goes, I'm capable. I mean, I can do stuff. I'm a good writer. I have a love for science, but I don't know what I want to focus on. What does their program look like at your school?
I think it's okay for them not to know, because we're cognizant of their age and knowing that teenagers and we're that. And especially a lot of times, even culturally, their parents are pushing them towards one thing versus their own thing or their own passion or interest. But giving them the choice of and giving them choices to test the variety of things, whether it's through the courses, through the electives, through the clubs, through speaking with teachers, through their mentorship program that we have, through our experiential learning program, and then through our research program. So they get to choose who they work with. They get to choose the variety. Like we have a whole menu of over 20 something experiential learning programs. And it's just choosing things that they don't know or they're curious about. And I think it just starts from where their curiosity takes them and giving them that responsibility to choose what their interest is.
I would just add to that it's this playground of options, so none of the students we have will have ever had this educational experience before. So everyone's coming in, it's just like, wow, it's overwhelming. And for some, it takes a little bit longer to adjust to this new environment. Right. But also with the faculty, because you're saying you get to create this, you get to determine, what you're going to do, what you're going to get involved in. We have students who teach fully credited courses. You have students who are TAs. You have students who are taking courses with students who are senior 3 or senior 1. So grade 10s and grade 12s, it's mixed and matched. It's based on your interests. It's based on what is you're wanting to uncover, what is you're wanting to connect to, participate with, et cetera. So it's open, and there is that support with mentors and advisors and college counselors, and then the teachers themselves, and then the department chairs, deputy head of school, dean of faculty, dean of students. There's
even their own friends. I feel like a lot of times their own friends will convince them to do things that they never considered for themselves. But I think it's important for us as the provider to explain what those opportunities may lead to and may guide to, so that it can give them a clearer understanding of what they're choosing.
Wow. I'm just blown away hearing what you're talking about. Like it's a bit of a dream world, right? When we're not new to education. We've been around a long time, and you look at different models that you think are great, and then you think of what it could be, and what you guys are talking about is spectacular. I do have a question that comes to mind, and I'm sure you've been asked it 1,000 times. How do you measure that you're doing well? How do you measure the success that the school is having? And obviously based on what you're talking about, where you have, these co-constructed classes and faculty engagement, I mean, all the predictors are there for success, but how do you actually measure it?
I'm so embarrassed to say this, but I think that for the easiest way for us to measure or see it is seeing where our students end up. We have a really strong matriculation list. But meaning that, if we have students that are accepted by the US top 10, top 20, a majority of them go to top 50, then it's like, wow, they're appreciating what we're doing. The research is going a long way, or their research is, quality research if they get into Oxford. So that's a very fast and easy way for us to look at.
I would look at our admissions, how that's increased every single year. Because the story of our school is so unique and it's getting out, and people want to be a part of that. They're like, this is the healthiest and most amazing, innovative, exciting educational platform that there is. So getting into this program is very challenging. So for me, that's one indicator. It's looking at the attrition. Are there any students or faculty leaving within the year or at the end of the year? How many are coming in? What's the yield? How many are staying? How are we able to attract, teaching faculty? That's another indicator. The people who work in our school are there because they're so passionate and they're so inspired. And this is unlike anything that they've ever experienced before. They're there for that opportunity to work with these students and to really change the face of education, and then again have that opportunity to contribute to their field. So I think that for me, it's seeing that there's no finish line and people have accepted that, are excited by that, and they continue to be fired up to then be working on these projects, et cetera, and that they want to be there long term. And we have faculty saying to us, I mean, sign me up for 5 years or 10 years. What's the maximum that you can lock me down for? You know? And the other piece is the students that go through our program and system, they care about it so much that when they go to university, often they're disappointed because it didn't even come close to their experience at our school, where they were so free and had so much, they were so empowered, that they want to stay connected to the school. They want to be working with us. So what's your admissions like this year? Can I be involved in that? I mean, they want to stay connected and involved. They want to make sure that the school continues to grow, get better, and it remains true to itself, that it stays that experiment within an experiment, you know, so that they care a great deal. Who are the new faculty? You know, they want to work with them. They want to know what things that they're doing. What are their expertise? What's their network? And then the students, what kind of projects are students then doing this year that are different from the previous years? How can we then help and support them? So everyone is just so passionate, caring, and supportive. But I also think it comes down to, it's the first time in my professional life that I have a relationship with the community of people I work with that's similar to my marriage. It's one that's completely loving and open and supportive, and you can take the biggest risks possible, be so brave, and my partner's still here. You know, I don't have to keep anything in, you know what I mean? And then in this working environment, we're all so brave and so real and so genuine. I mean, the faculty and the students get to be their true and authentic self. I mean, what is that thumbprint that makes you and unique? That's why we brought you into the school, teaching faculty and student. You want that diversity, right? And I think what's beautiful and special is that you have people taking immense risk and often failing, and you have people there to then support them, connect them to more resources, pat them on the back. I love you. Look what you've done. You've inspired me to do this. I'm not a writer, but I want to work with you. And your writing community, because I'm so inspired by what you're doing and your students are doing. You're showing me that it's capable and anyone can do it. I mean, prior to even joining the school, I never even had the interest or the desire to even do my own doctorate. You know, I thought a master's was it, but then I'm surrounded by a community of people who most of them have PhDs or postdocs. And I'm thinking, oh my God, how can I run and lead this community when I don't even have the educational credentials that they do? And this is in a Chinese context. And I felt inspired by them. I felt I needed to be more brave. I needed to take more risk and chance if that's what I'm expecting them to do, you know? And this school has evolved so much. When Aileen and I when we were first introduced to the school, we were like, whoa, this is so special. This is so unique. If we just shine the light on this school, this is the winning lottery ticket. We're like, this is it. This is the model in practice. And it was at the time when we were thinking, we got to leave education. We have to leave education because everything's been the same. We bounced around the world, these different international schools, IB, AP, and it's just been a rat race for matriculation and IBDP results or AP results. But the teachers weren't doing anything meaningful. The students weren't doing anything meaningful. It was just me, and my exams, you know, and then where do I get placed? And then how do you find or differentiate the schools? Well, these are our faculty, this is our revenue, and these are our fancy buildings. And they locked the compound and no one's allowed in, right? And so we thought, we can't do this anymore. I mean, this could be the one and only life I have in my prime with my passion. I mean, is this what I'm going to be focused on? This is what I'm going to be doing? You know, what am I going to be known for? You know, just helping the elite, you know, to stay the elite, you know? So at that time when we were thinking we have to consider a career change, we were invited to visit the school. And were welcomed on the school campus by Jason and Zale. One was a recent graduate who wanted to stay and work with students on different projects and initiatives. And he and an 11th grader started their own company. And so I was like, wait, first I was like, where are the important people? Where's the head of school? Where's the board chair? Why am I talking to students, you know? And then I quickly realized, oh my God, I mean, this is the first time in my career where a school actually has it right. I'm meeting the most important people right at the gate. You know, and they're talking to me about their company. They're talking to me about what they're doing. They're telling me that at that time they had $5 million in seed money. Now, how did you do that? I don't even know how to get seed money. Who are you working with? How did you learn that? And then we went and had a coffee at Neon Cafe, which is a cafe that's completely run by students. You know, this cafe has around 50 employees and makes about $75,000 a year. You know, and something, how is this allowed? You know, where'd you get the space? Who's training you? Who's overseeing it? You know, where are the adults? Well, there are no adults. So we run it, we manage it, you know, and we take that profit and then we donate it to these various projects and initiatives, you know, in China and around the world. And I'm thinking, wait, how are these things allowed to happen? You know, and then when you peel back the layers, you're like, wow, you have students who are starting and running companies, very successful. They're going out and consulting to help other students. You see that they're really trying to make a difference to work with other students and people around the world. In addition to that, we learned that, there are students in the school that have up to 7 patents. How do you even get a patent? How does that even work? But you have students with that many, starting and running companies, patents. You have students who are students and faculty, again, researching and publishing all the time. So we never thought these things were possible for students. We never thought they were possible for faculty. How many times do you meet faculty who've ever run businesses or have publications, et cetera?
Right.
So for us, it was like, this is the most incredible place we've ever seen in terms of learning, teaching and learning. But the school at that time, when we joined 5 years ago, was very much this model of an independent school. It was trying to be like a Phillips Exeter Academy. It was trying to be like a Hotchkiss. So most of the faculty were coming from academia. Most of the faculty, PhD, postdoc. But we saw this opportunity. Look at these students, they're so entrepreneurial. What if we then complement that team? What if we complement that staff and we hire more people from industry? So then we started hiring, doctors, lawyers, politicians, and even a space engineer. So then you bridge the world between academia and industry so that we could have more outcomes beyond just research and publications, but then patents and or products that are going to then be very beneficial and meaningful for people in certain contexts that could change and better the world.
So besides me sending you my resume because I'd like to come work at your school, and Josh and I have been in education long enough to know that every school has challenges, right? There are issues that you face because you're dealing with 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, and you're also dealing with faculty with egos and all of that. So I'm curious, you've certainly presented just an amazing picture of a school.
Absolutely.
What challenges are there in that environment? Certainly in a traditional independent school, I can list a few. And I'm kind of curious to know if they're similar in your world.
I think our first year there, creating that culture, taking the culture further, especially when you have new hires, it might be new graduates, new educators, and then you show them this and they're like, oh, they're scared to take risks, or, they weren't at a place that encouraged that. So they didn't really get that opportunity. So how do you support that and remind them, this is the culture we're going for. We're going to support you. You need to take leadership. I think one of the major things that Spencer had been able to foster while he was there was, empowering the department chairs, because you've created that level where, the department chairs are the next in line, where they're held accountable for the department's goals and the department's progress.
So the departments, yes, they yield a lot of power and control. They're able to then look at that chessboard and be very strategic, so they're able to then hire who they want. So they're involved in leading that hiring process. What are the kind of faculty that's going to complement their department? And so they're very much hands-on. They lead that. They lead the training, the onboarding, and they also lead then that conversation if someone really isn't a good fit, which doesn't happen very often, because they're there to then support these people because they were the ones that chose them and brought them in, So it's not like other schools where I was at where, this person is not a good fit. I need you to fire them or move them on. They care a great deal for those in the department. Mm-hmm. And if someone's letting them down, they're going to have those difficult conversations with them, as opposed to me or other senior leadership who are the most removed from the teaching and learning in that learning space. I'm not an expert in your area. How can I hire for it? And we'll go to these recruiting fairs as a way to get the word out, but also then be helping and supporting our chairs and their department so that we find people, we meet people, and then we put them in touch with it. And it's up to them if they want to continue or pursue these people, And so they own it. They're all in. And it's like these departments are like mini schools within the school. Mm-hmm. And so it's great because I didn't hire them, and there's a disconnect between what is we're trying to accomplish and what the chair is trying to accomplish. The teachers and the students are the ones dictating to us as the leadership what they want. Where should we be allocating more resources? In this year, in this academic year, it was brought to our attention that we need to have more resources specific to supporting research grants. We're not a school with deep pockets. We're connected to Peking University, but you know what? It's actually been very beneficial. I look at a lot of the schools I've been at, or a lot of the schools we work with. They have so much money that they waste a lot of money. There's no fat on the bones here. So we're not buying the latest and greatest 3D printers and laser cutters. Rather, we are connecting our students to people and to projects, architects, engineers, with better equipment and better projects, more meaningful projects to then pursue that passion and interest, where they're going to add a lot of value and where they're going to learn a great deal, as opposed to buying these things and sending someone to Beaverworks, for a week PD because they liked whittling in their grandpa's wood shop when they were young. You know what I mean? We can do better than that, And when we go to schools, we visit schools and we have conversations with other people and you look at what they produced, you're like, just garbage. I mean, you've made these keychains. What good is that? How's that bettering the world? You're adding more trash,
Patent that? Well, that's what you can ask them.
Yeah. So for the school, like the fact that, we haven't raised tuition like a private school.
In 10 years. Tuition has been fixed since the school opened its doors 10 years ago, and our max enrollment of 300 has been fixed. Only this year, we're looking at increasing that enrollment.
So recruitment can be difficult for us when we're recruiting international teachers. It might be more lucrative working for an international school that's been around for a while. So that's another issue, is recruiting international hire teachers.
It's just daunting. It's overwhelming. If you go to a recruiting fair that's predominantly, filled or attended by those who are K-12 educated with their BEds or MBAs, et cetera, they don't feel confident to completely design and create their own curriculum. They're used to having the Alberta curriculum, the Ontario curriculum, and then also the IB or the AP, So there's that safety net. And here we're just saying, it's up to you, and you have the expertise and you have the talent. So that's a fantasy for most people, but then it's when they think about, can I pull this off, working with some of the most exciting, capable students, it can be overwhelming.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, it's that old saying. I mean, the toughest thing is being given the chance to do what you really want to do, because then you have to do it. If someone hands me as a teacher, if someone says, okay, I'm supposed to be a English teacher. That was what my degree was in. I found out that wasn't my calling pretty quickly. But if someone handed me an IB, what's that?
You couldn't write. That's why.
Dude, this is a podcast. People are listening to this. You're undermining my authority here. No, but if someone handed me like an IB grade 10 program, I could teach English. Like you can rely on that, and it's a crutch. But to have someone say, okay, we're hiring you, you're gonna travel across the world, and now you're going to design the complete program. It's going to be, as you say, collaborative with 15 to 18-year-olds. I mean, that is something that people would just go, you know what? I don't know if I can do that.
Candidates that say that.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Yeah, more, especially if we're looking in that pool of candidates where they're already in the international circuit, where they're coming from public schools back home, then this sounds amazing, but then they think, I don't know if I'm capable of doing that.
And usually when you go to, say, an international school, we work with a lot of international teachers that come from everywhere. But here, the dynamics are different. It's 50% local teachers and then 50% foreign hires. And so there's been kind of like a cultural sensitivity. You would need cultural sensitivity skills and see, how do you know what's a fine balance, and how do you kind of think about incorporating each other's values into your curriculum.
Yeah, of course.
I'll be honest, I'll say pleasantly shocked with some of the research that our students have engaged in, thinking like, oh my God, reading through this, is this going to be okay? And some of the research that really challenges things within the context of China. And I'm thinking, could this get us in trouble? Right. Fortunately, we're given a wide berth by Peking University, which is the government, to really explore and to really play. So we don't have the confines that other schools have. I mean, like I said, we're meant to be this experiment with an experiment, which gives us that free reign to really do what we want. And there really isn't anyone coming to sort of mess with what we're doing, which has been amazing.
I'm really interested in, I read online that you have a boarding component. So the kids are living at the school. And I know lived in lots of boarding schools for lots of years, and there's a different culture that exists in boarding, that when kids are living there, they seem to be connected to the community in a much more meaningful way through my experience. And I'm wondering if your school would work as well if the kids didn't board.
It does give us some allowance to then offer, night classes, evening classes. Mm-hmm. And it also gives students an opportunity to, if they're not teaching during the academic day, to be running different clubs and initiatives in the evening. So there is more opportunity in a sense. And even those who aren't boarding, they want to be there in the evenings. They want to be there on the weekends because things are happening with their peers and it is exciting. And the school really does open up for others to come in to collaborate and to work on things. So it is sort of that central space where people could be hopping to and from. And I think that our boarding component's only about a third of our student population. I wish it was more, but if you're there, there is that buzz, and that buzz is, it feels like 24/7. Mm-hmm. And I think that you're right. I think that those who aren't in the boarding component are kind of shortchanged in a way. because those experiences that they get to contribute to, be a part of in the evenings and weekends is really special and meaningful. And I think that they are being set up more for then their educational career and life beyond our school and outside of China. Aileen was, running and leading that. And our boarding program has really been evolving. So I'll allow you to maybe speak more to those initiatives.
So traditionally, I don't know if you visited a Chinese boarding program.
I have a couple times. They're huge. I visited a boarding program in China with 6,000 boarders. 6,000.
Okay.
Whoa.
And a lot of times, I don't know if you saw a lot of activities going on, or was it a lot of self-study that was going on?
It was a lot of self-study, and there was 27 basketball courts. That's what I remember.
So since my time there, we've been trying to, help develop the program, make it a little stronger, tighten it, because we see what other boarding schools, especially in the States, are doing and how they make it a lot more community-based and less, self-study. And so trying to have that and incorporate that into our system, it's also a big ask because they're not used to that. They weren't aware that, they could be doing meaningful things during that time instead of just self-studying, cramming for the test. And so by going in there, speaking to them, telling them these students have an advantage because this is how you're going to be living when you move abroad for university. So you already have that experience. But now when you go there, a lot of universities don't want students to just go to their university and reap whatever you get from the university. They want people who are going to be active and engaged in the communities. So how can you prove that you can do that? And then use that time here now to prove that you're able to engage in an environment like that when you go there. And so trying to get in their minds and let them lead, activities that they want to do, have them lead events and have them think of, things that they want to participate in groups that they want to create. So we were very fortunate that there wasn't much in the beginning, and then allowing them to develop and run what they're really interested in. And then making sure that they're aware that they have this advantage compared to our day students that, go home. A lot of them don't have siblings, so they go home by themselves and you lose that advantage.
I think, we're being looked at as an exemplar opportunity to re-engineer everything. So it's the boarding experience. It's the curriculum. It's the teaching and learning. It's how we've structured the management and the department chairs, the faculty. It's the whole and complete structure. It's the systems and the policies and procedures. Everything that we're doing is meant to sort of push back against the traditional system. When I have conversations with my board chair, they want to be the most provocative educational program in the world. And you know what? We've had opportunities to speak at Harvard for a week during the Learning Environments for Tomorrow conference, and people are shocked. They're shocked that this school that's connected to a public school and a public university in China are doing things that no one else is doing. This Saturday, I'm speaking with Young Tsao and Chris Titi from Harvard, and I'm going to be speaking about these things because most people don't know the school because it's off their radar. It's not the International School of Beijing. It's not that traditional international school, so they don't know about it. And then they're floored to hear that the students have so much autonomy, the faculty have so much autonomy, and these are the kind of projects and output you get.
I got to ask, I'm on board. I got you. Everything you guys are saying so far. The outlier here for me is finding the kid that matches the profile that you're looking for and that you can accept. But along with that kid comes a parent. And I've dealt with lots of Chinese parents over the years in boarding schools and in independent school education. And it would take a very special parent to embrace the concepts of what you're talking about and ignoring the traditional path. So you're not only accepting the student into the school, you're also accepting the parent. And I'm really curious to know if how that works. Like, what does that look like? It's got to be a little bit of a madness.
Doing the admissions season is really crazy, chaotic period. We have a lot of student applicants, and like Spencer said, that enrollment number or that number of applicants is growing every year. And you know what? There are times where parents don't feel secure. They want a more secure curriculum. They're like, oh, you're not AP school? Okay. And then we are very transparent with what we are because it's not about just wanting applications and candidates. We really want students who believe in what we're doing is the right thing. We want a student and families who are going to take advantage of the choices that we're going to provide them with when it comes to, their curriculum leading in their education. So we've lost parents and families based on our curriculum before.
I would say that it's a very slow and methodical process. And Aileen was the mastermind by taking the college counseling department and then having them be responsible for the admissions and also then the alumni relations. So we'll hear more about that in a minute, but a very methodical process which involves the admissions process, which involves your English department and involves other faculty and students, where students are completing online applications and we're getting lots of information about them and their families. And I think it's worth noting that most of our parents are coming from academia. They're academics in China and or overseas. So they're wanting and supporting, at least for the most part, this kind of very provocative education that's very empowering to their student, to their son or to their daughter. They love it. There are a few where they signed up for this. And then once they're in the system, they'll think, well, this is too scary. This is too open. I don't want my son or my daughter to fall through the cracks here, Right. And so could you do IB or could you help teach to these standardized exams? And no. There is the infrastructure and support there with the mentors and the advisors and the 2 college counselors, 1 local, one foreign, et cetera, to then be there to shepherd and guide. But I mean, like Aileen was saying, it is a process, and it's one that takes many, many months and many conversations where the students are coming on campus. They're having different tests or experiences, I'll say, where our students are running things, the faculty are running things, these different activities. They're doing writing samples, there's Socratic seminars, Harkness. So there's many ways for us to tease out, because we're choosing and picking students who are going to be very different. We want that diversity not only with the teaching faculty, but also with the students. So different passions, different interests, different talents. And it's something that's so important. That's why we've entrusted the college counseling department to then see us through the admissions process, the experience in our school where they're quarterbacking that and working with the different faculties, parents, et cetera. And they're hosting and running workshops and conversations with them so that they don't panic from their grade 10 year to grade 11 year to grade 12 year. So there is constant communication. We rely on them to then get into labs at Peking University or to have experiences with different academics at Tsinghua and others. So we need to rely on them. And we want them to be a part of supporting this very unique and bespoke curriculum. So if they're not on board, we need to figure out a way to educate them, and thousands will come and hear us talk about the school, and you got pictures of me and Yao Ming and they're like, they love it. But their phones come out when they see the matriculation list, So number one, they see this list of schools where they want their kid to go. And they look at what's the admissions criteria. So it's like Moneyball, right? So these parents go to these different schools and they look, what does it take to get in? And where are you going? And which school is going to give us the best chance of getting in there? Yeah. But we're saying our story is much bigger than that. In this journey, it's so amazing that each student gets to be that true and authentic self. Each student has an opportunity to really change the world. And an outcome of that is that there's a lot of universities out there that get very excited about these projects and what these students are doing.
Wow.
So I'm a student. I'm going to another school. I'm 12, 13, and I see your school. It's down the road, or it's 20 miles away, or wherever it is, because you said you do have a lot of local students. Is that correct?
60% of our students come from Beijing.
Yeah, there you go. So how do I start that process? I go home and talk to my parents and say, this school down the road, like how does that start? Like it makes me think of Jason. So the first student I met who's starting Moonshot Academy. So a school within a school. So now we have Moonshot Academy, which is a school run by students for students. So I meet Jason. Jason learned of our school and he took his red envelope money, his Chinese New Year money. He flew himself to Beijing to then reach out to the faculty at that time to then apply, went through the application process, went home, and then once he was admitted, then asked his parents, hey, can I go to the school? So, we have students, students are, I like that guy already.
Are dialed in. Not just him, that was many years ago, but there's students who, this is the kind of experience that they want. They've been told, in this educational system, this is what you need to do. Their parents are then designing their schedule for them so that all day long, all evening long, you don't really contribute much in the class, because if you share, then you're going to be helping someone else get better and smarter, and then they can outscore you on the exams. So then outside of school, you have to then work with tutors and coaches and go to these cram sessions again to then be sharper and ahead of the rest that you're competing against. So there's no competition in the school, which is beautiful because there's no standardized exam we're all fighting for,
Being a national Q-level school, we're a very prestigious school in the country. So one of the most prestigious schools. So the parents already know us. Families know us. What we also have challenges is that we have agents waiting outside our door paying students to tell them what we just asked them in the interview. and paying them making a copy of a test so that they could charge people, preparation to get into our school.
And these students all have photographic memories, so they're able to recite exactly what they did. These were the exact questions that was asked. You know what I mean? And then here's your money. You know what I mean? So then that afternoon and the next day, we have to keep changing the whole experience
because part of that, I had to.
They're going to try and game it.
Different versions, and every year, we have to make different versions. And we think about it, we're like, you know what? Prestigious universities have the same application every year. They might change some prompts, now and then. It's like, do we follow that? Should we be changing our prompts? Is it necessary to change our prompts? And now we're thinking, in the end, it has to be, I don't think we can change it as many times as we are, but really when we're asking the questions, really being cognizant of why we're asking those questions and how does their answers to the questions highlight their academic potential. And
the challenge with the PSAT, which is a standardized test that you could use is it probably would not ask the questions that you need to know for entrance into your school. So that's a pretty unique challenge. I don't know if many schools in the world struggle with that.
We have agents coming to our school all the time. When we have an open house and we're speaking about our school, you have cameras out and that probably 30, 40% of the people in the audience are agents who are then going to try and put together some kind of package that they're going to then communicate or advertise that they can get your son or daughter into our school. And we're saying there is no formula that's going to get you in. It's that uniqueness. It's that student who's inspirational and willing to take, major risks and to be contributing to other students and their educational experience and then beyond the walls of the school.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not looking for typical students. Like you're looking for a special breed for sure.
If you just care about yourself, you're going to come in, study hard, work hard, be in the dorm studying again, but you're not helping anyone else, then forget about it.
No.
And sometimes that's a culture thing too, because remember my first year, we had this amazing hockey student. And, we were fighting over, culturally again, what does it mean to be one of our students? And, the student didn't get really good grades, but he was supposed to be in the, the national team for hockey. And so if he becomes an Olympian, well, what does that mean for our school? So we didn't understand that because his score was kind of low compared to the average of the other students that were admitted. So.
But it was his pre-Junko. His Junko actually turned out to be very high. So we're asked to consider the Junko scores, which is the exam you're going to take when you're leaving middle school to go into high school. So we're asked by our board. So the government says, okay, the affiliate high school Peking University, this is sort of the threshold. This is the students you can admit will have to have achieved this score, right? And so based on the ranking of schools, those numbers are going to decrease. Because the affiliate high school is a very high ranked school, then they get students with the high Junko scores. So then we're told to also consider students with those high scores. But we also look at these outliers. We also look at students who are within the system or outside of the system, or who weren't that successful, or who were successful but are also very unique. So there's a lot of things that we consider that the main school, the affiliate high school, Beta Fu, wouldn't consider. They're just going to take you based on those results. And for us, it's a very long process.
As an educator, what's the best thing about your school? I mean, everything you talked about today, you got me like I'm on the edge of my seat here. But if you were to summarize and say, the best thing that we do in our school every day is, what would it be? I mean, there's lots of what you're giving me, from patents to seed money to you name it. Those are all great things.
For me, it's that we're setting everyone up for a home run. You know what I mean? It's like you're a teacher coming into our school. What do you want to teach? What do you care about? Where's this teaching and learning journey going to go? And if it's the base of a tree, then the branches are the students. You know what I mean? Where's your research taking you? And then what's that network like? What are the opportunities beyond that are connected to that? So it's not like taking an English teacher and saying, I need you to teach TOK this semester. It's you get to choose and you get to dictate. I mean, you put out your courses and let's say students don't sign up for them. We're not going to penalize you and then say, well, now I need you to do these administrative things. So if students haven't signed up for your courses, you decide whether they're going to run or not with one student or two students. I mean, it's up to you ultimately. But then it would give them time to reflect, to be like, okay, what did I miss? These are the courses that I designed. I've been working with students and no one signed up for my classes, or very few students signed up for my classes. Here's an opportunity for me to now really buckle down in my research, really think about interesting and unique ways to then captivate or get them involved. Okay, I'm going to get them more involved in my research, or I'm going to get them involved in different ways. So it's not just filling their time with meaningless things. It's saying, okay, this is an opportunity for you. And there's been the ebbs and flows. There's faculty members who've crushed it and their classes are completely full. And then there's times where like, oh, not a lot of people are registering and enrolling. Why? Why not? Why aren't they opting to be in your course?
I was a TOK teacher and my classes were always full. I just for the record, I want to point that out. Love TOK. The admin team, we're not dictating where people should be. You know? Yeah.
Right.
So people didn't sign up. So then this is an opportunity for you. And likewise with students, you get to choose your own path. You know, are you going to be doing more night classes? Are you going to be choosing more classes in the humanities? Or are you going to be choosing classes more in the STEM, the STEAM, the stream, more in the engineering? So it really allows people to play to their strengths, pursue their passions, pursue their interests. And I think for the first time that I've ever seen in a high school context, teacher and students, that partnership, that relationship where there's that respect, there's that mutual respect, and that we've seen that these people are capable of really changing the world and bettering the world.
One of the things that I when you're talking, and I know I said this earlier, that it does seem like you're starting the university experience earlier. It seems like this connecting a high school to a university is the perfect place to actually experiment with this type of model. Is there any other universities around the world that you know of that are doing this?
We work with University of Chicago Laboratory School. And I think yes, it's important to have that connection and relationship. There's also University of Winnipeg Collegiate. So there are lots of schools around there that have a connection or relationship with universities. So students can take university level classes.
Right.
But that's not enough. I think you have to have industry side of things as well. That's the marriage that's missed.
Have you been approached by like another university saying, look, we think we could do this as well, or maybe we could do something similar to that? Because I think you're right. I've seen universities connected.
We're so fortunate that there are people, yes, there are institutions, but there are people from different organizations and universities that are wanting to work with us. I want to work with you. I want to support this. I want to be part of this. So we've had faculty members who have co-taught classes, a Harvard professor who's teaching poetry, and then a faculty member from our school, they're co-teaching. And then the students are also getting Harvard University credits while they're also doing our course. So then it could be faculty member from our school who are then working with different people from the UN or the Chinese embassy in Jordan, et cetera. So we push and encourage that it can't all come from one faculty member. It can't all, and it can't all just stay within our students. It has to spill out to more people.
Working for the education group, there is also a lot. The education group has 12 schools, that they oversee and they help manage. And we also have a lot of schools that are taken our name previously and that we no longer have connections with. So along with just the name, families really and faculty, teachers, educators need to do their research and make sure that it's not being sold by just the name, and really look under the hood to see what it is, because the institutions all range. Just because they have a name or a affiliation is somewhere, you might not know how tight that affiliation may be, and if it is, how closely they're being managed by it. So you have to look under the hood.
Yeah.
Do your homework, right?
Yeah.
To what Aileen's saying is that, we do have university admissions people calling us saying, hey, do you have a campus in, whatever city in China? We look at them like, I don't. But the thing is this, Peking University a long time ago was sort of selling the name to the highest bidder. And so there are schools that are legally allowed to use the name and fly that banner, but they have no connection to us. They just are allowed to use the name. And so admissions people get confused. Wait, that's not one of your campuses? And Aileen's like, no, they have to clarify. These are the few that are connected to us. And a lot of these schools pretend and try to make this connection that isn't genuine, that doesn't exist. And so I'm constantly checking with my board. Wait, who's this school? Who are these students? Who are these people? And they're like, don't worry about it. Peking University made a big mistake in the 70s or whenever they were then supporting and allowing this to happen. It was this short-term money gain, but now it's something we're trying to uncluster, if you will. Back to then the name. Now we've sort of outgrown the Dalton name and title. Again, I mentioned before that was confusing for people. They're like, are you connected to Peking University and its affiliated high school, or Dalton in New York? And we're like, and then the problem is, which my board had recognized, is now there are more and more Dalton schools popping up that aren't so great. And then they think that that's sort of bringing down our name and brand, And so it's, do we shed that, or do we maintain that, or what do we do? The whole brand identity. And in China, as Aileen was saying, there's a lot of people who are sort of, counterfeit, pretend that their model's connected to ours, or in Shenzhen or other places say, come to this program, it's connected to that one.
You give it to your students and have that be a project that they together, and then you'll come up with the right answer.
I mean, they usually lead most projects. I mean, the most recent one was we did a renovation of our building, and that was all completely run and led by students and faculty. And I was even hoping that my office would be gone, but now it's become a shared space. So there's this very nice and clean formal space that students have access to, parents have access to, admin, teachers, etc. So, but you give these people an opportunity and they hit it out of the park because they care so deeply about it.
Yeah.
For Aileen and I, the most amazing thing that we've ever experienced was the Access Scholarship. And I'm gonna ask her to sort of share what that is and what that means to us. Because if I talk about it, I'll be crying.
No,
so
I'm always wanted to get emotional about it. I've spoken about it a few times, and every time it's just, tears running down my face.
Right from here, yeah, go.
So we have an incredible faculty member who came out with the course Introduction to the Refugee Crisis. So with this course, he took his class to Jordan, and then coming back from Jordan, visiting the refugee camps, they decided that they wanted to do something and help. And how they were going to do that was to create an Access Scholarship. So the scholarship went to a senior student the first time around. And being a part of admissions, I was able to go to Amman and see the students that were applying for this Access Scholarship. We are the first and only high school in China that has a scholarship like this. And when the student came to our school, he was, his English ability wasn't that strong, his math ability wasn't that strong, and we had teachers that were saying, were questioning us, like, what are you guys thinking? This is a really bad mistake. And then later on, after 3 months of trying with them and telling them providing them with more support, then they were actually able to turn it around and said, you know what, Aileen, he's the best student I've ever had, or that they've ever had. And in the end, he tried so hard. He's very persistent. Every teacher worked with him as much as they could. And in the end, we got him a scholarship at Northwestern Qatar, full ride, 4 years. And if it wasn't for this opportunity, he would be stuck in a refugee camp with very little to no support. So for us going into education and being able to change lives, it's 100% the reason why we do the things we do.
Aileen's being a little modest. There's a lot that goes into this. I mean, you have students who are, 3 weeks in Jordan. They're working with different refugee camps. They're working with the UN, UNHCR, the Chinese embassy, different NGOs, and they're doing field research. Initially, the idea was we're going to be here, we're going to do field research, we're going to publish academic papers. But the students were so moved when working with these other students their age in these refugee camps, realizing they have little to no choice and no opportunities. You can't work and you can't be educated. What do you do? How do you live? How do you survive? So they came back and they're like, we are at the greatest and best school in the world. We need to help as many people as possible, bring them to our school to then be a launching pad for them, for their life, for career, so that they can then be helping and supporting more of these people. And I mean, we're talking about something that's like next to impossible. How do you get someone out of a refugee camp? How do you get them out of the country? How do you get them into China? And Aileen didn't share that. And then Aileen didn't, so that was, because we're connected to Peking University, which is connected to the government, which allowed us to work with Entry and Exit Bureau, which allowed us to then work with the Chinese embassy, which then worked with the people to allow that person out of the camp in another country. I mean, there was a lot of moving parts here. How do you make that happen in a matter of months? Aileen and a team flying there, working with students and faculty to do the admissions process, and meeting this one student whose story was so compelling. I mean, bullets coming in through the wall, fire being started, bullets just missing his sister's head. They had to escape, but you have to go undetected because if they spotted you, you were dead. And then that journey to then get out of the country and then into Jordan. And then once you're in the Jordan, then being processed and then put into these camps, which is like being imprisoned, So you get that story. You meet the student who's amazing. But the thing is this, Aileen was one who single-handedly placed this student. And if we didn't get him placed, we didn't know if he could stay in China after that 1 year. And he couldn't go back to Jordan. He can't go back. Once he's left, that's it. He said bye to his parents, and they said, we believe in you, and we know that you're going to do great. But schools were turning him down because he didn't have high SAT scores. He didn't have high TOEFL scores, He has a Syrian passport. We didn't even know where can we send the student to even write the SAT because we couldn't do it in China. We're like, oh my, after research and some investment, we find out he can go to Malaysia. I mean, so the thing was so complicated and so challenging, but we're fighting for a life for this student. And if we didn't make it work, we didn't know what the outcome was going to happen to him. and it turned out to be the most compelling story. This one student changed everything in our program, changed everything in our community, because before we had 100% Chinese students, or the few foreigners who were there could speak Chinese, read and write Chinese, because they've been immersed in that culture for so long. And here you have someone who's a Syrian refugee, doesn't speak the language, English isn't his second, maybe third language. The culture is so different. Where are the closest mosques, the halal food? There are so many things to consider. Who should he be boarding with? He's boarding 24/7 during holidays. Who does he stay with? Who's watching him? Because the dorm's empty out, but he's not leaving. What's happening during Chinese New Year? What's happening during the summer vacations? Yeah. All these sorts of things, He's got one pair of pants and one pair of shoes. Mm-hmm. You have faculty who are donating money to him so he can have a suit, so he can graduate and look good, and be confident, so that when he goes to Qatar, that he has that suit. He's been successful, and it was such an emotional and beautiful thing and journey to get this student there, that transition, or that journey then within, that changed us all. Here's someone who was fighting for his life, and we had to step up and change. We had to accommodate him and his needs, So I think the ultimate test people ask is, well, how can this model of education be replicated to serve other people? We were talking about someone who's been displaced by war, left his family, friends, culture. He's been out of the educational system. He's never had an educational system like this. So for me, the ultimate and true test was that this student hit a home run in that sphere, in this context.
Yeah.
It couldn't be a more challenging test for us. He wasn't successful with the SATs, IELTS, TOEFL, et cetera, which are these metrics that are set up to then weed out, who's got the money and the support and the resources. All of our other students crushed those exams because they've been in a system like that, so just breathe that. Standardized tests, they eat that stuff for dinner, but then this student, he's never done anything like it. So we were panicked. We were worried, what is going to happen to this student? And what we've seen then happen since is that more students who go annually to Jordan continue to then try and figure out more ways to support these students. Now we have a lot more virtual programs happening where they're teaching, and their students are then teaching other students in Jordan, refugees and not, to then help them, to set them up for their academic life and even beyond that. So we've seen that these courses, which bring students and give them these opportunities that most students would never have, really changes their lives. And now we have students who have gone off to university and they're like, I want to work for the UN. I want to help these people who are helpless, So coming to this kind of school, it's going to change your life for the better. Really opens your eyes up to the world.
Over the past 3.5 years, you and I, Spencer, have spoken on a number of occasions because we went through a program together over the last 3 years. One of the things that I am absolutely convinced of, regardless of the type of educational system you're in, Brian was in one type, I'm in a different type. You are in a unique system. If we could bring the passion that you and Aileen bring to our systems, then there's things that we can do to make the world better on our own, whether or not we're reflecting the unique type of education that you're providing. Because there are people, they don't have to be in a refugee camp in Jordan. There's people that are in our communities across the street in a different province, in a different state, where our educational systems do have the resources to reach out and touch those people and change their lives. And I think the passion that you brought to this podcast, you could only hope that would infect the educational world.
You guys are fighting a good fight, and I really have a lot of admiration for your story. It's really spectacular. So thank you very much for your time tonight, guys.
Yeah.
This is a dialed down version. Wow. Once we start talking about it, it's like, oh crap, you know what I mean? It's like, you can't contain that, but how can you? You know what I mean? It's like you're madly in love with your partner, and this is like that equivalent, that, wow. I thought I was a good hockey player, and I thought I was a good educator, but until we stumbled on this school in this context, even we feel like, wow, we've just changed so much, and just so inspired to keep going. Like you said, fight the good fight. I mean, part of our mission is how can we then help, inspire, plant that seed? How can we help other schools develop that program within their program? I mean, some are like, well, how could we do it? I mean, well, you start small and you scale up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, what you're talking about is a revolution, the way that schools operate now. It looks nothing like what you're doing. There are tenets of it and there are pieces of it, but you seem to have put it all together. So
the other piece is that everything we make is open source. We don't hold and hang on to that ourselves.
That's awesome.
It's meant to be given and gifted to other people. And then likewise, we want to be then helping, coaching, and supporting others so that they can do this too. And it actually helps us, because otherwise we would hang on to it and we'd be like, well, we have the magic formula. We don't need to do anything else. But by having it open source and having to give it to others, then that motivates us and inspires us to then keep forging ahead, And this is really rare in China, because other schools will come in and be like, what are you doing? And we open up the hood for them and we explain everything. We're like, here, we'll give you pieces of the engine. We'll rebuild it some way, and then we're like, can we come check out your school? And they're like, no way. You know what I mean? we're so open and honest, but then they're so afraid that they don't want to let us in. And we're like, we're willing to tell you everything. We'll unpack it all for you. We would love for you to be more successful. We would love for your educational system to be way more empowering and exciting and exceptional, so that you look at the journey and the outcomes in a different way other than always just matriculation.
Roll Call is executive produced and hosted by Brian Murray and Josh Simons. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us on iTunes, and make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. This podcast is sponsored by Reach Boarding, an award-winning, feature-rich boarding school management and residential campus software that improves student and risk management. Reach Boarding is used by over 400 schools across 5 continents to manage risk, gain efficiency, and improve communications throughout their boarding operations. To learn more about Reach Boarding, check out reachboarding.com.